Well, good morning, everyone. I have a little bit of an introduction to give, so while we get ready, our speaker gets ready, I'll go ahead and welcome everyone in, and also some of our youth. Glad you could be here this morning. All right, so on behalf of the witness team and our church, just want to warmly say welcome and thank you to Elder Mike and his wife Debbie for coming from North Carolina to come here and speak to our church. And so a little bit of an introduction here, so buckle up. But again, it's not about the man, it's not about the Christian, it's about Christ and what Christ has done and is doing, and so we thank the Lord for that. But hang in there. I've got a little bit of an introduction here to introduce our speaker, and then we'll get started. So Elder Mike McCloy is his name. He served our country in the military as an infantry officer. He graduated from U.S. Army Ranger School, Special Forces School, and the U.S. Army War College. He has led and commanded soldiers in peace, combat, and disaster response. Elder McCloy serves on the OPC Committee on Home Missions and Church Extension, the OPC Committee on Chaplains and Military Personnel, and other various ministries. He also helped set up the disaster response team for the Presbytery of the Southeast, which is, they go by the acronym DART. Is that right? DART. So he has some experience with disaster response. He continues to serve veterans as a mentor coordinator for a county veterans treatment court. He has worked with other various veterans services in the Carolinas, homeless veterans and their families, and then a background on his education. He has 5 master's degrees, including counseling, education, strategic planning, human services, Bible, and theology. And we're also glad that his wife Debbie is here with us. Where are you, Debbie? There you are, in the back with a hand. So Debbie is Mike's high school sweetheart. They've been married for 45 years, mother of 2 children, and she was often mom and dad as Mike was deployed in our country's service. They have 10 grandchildren. And also another thing about Debbie, she has a background in equine therapy, horses. So if you're interested in that, she'd be glad to talk with you. And also one last thing, when I had the opportunity to go down, work with Samaritan's Purse for a week, a coworker of mine and myself, they graciously opened up their home for us to stay and gave us sandwiches and took good care of us while we were helping out. So big thanks. So thanks again for coming, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for having us in Michigan. I know it's Debbie's first time. I'm fairly certain yesterday we walked the beaches over there at the state park, and Holland State Park, and I'm not a big fan of sand, having spent about 5 years in Iraq and all those places. But you do things sacrificially for your bride, and fortunately, I didn't get sand in places I did when I was in Iraq. But it's good to be here with y'all. Yesterday was a joy to be with the saints here to speak about disaster response, diaconal ministries, deacon helpers, and so forth. As you can see, y'all are much engaged in disaster response and what we call resurrection peacekeepers. And I was looking at this slide this morning in the Bible verse, and it reminded me of the joy that we simultaneously experience as a congregation with this crew here. And then I noticed that Stephen, we saw him running around in these shorts all the time, and we were wondering if he was wearing his Michigan long underwear or that was actually his legs, but it is his legs. And it was a means of identifying Stephen amongst the rest of them. But we got to know Stephen a little bit in Dima, his co-worker, when they came down for the Samaritan's Purse. I'm going to talk to you about an update on the work that we're doing. I hope many of y'all have seen the video that David Knocklin, the Diaconal Ministries of the denomination, put out about the work. And that was produced a while back, and now we need to provide an update. And that's what I'm going to do to encourage you and to give you, if you're willing, a mission. How many of us old enough to remember the TV show Mission Impossible? The good one, not Tom Cruise, that way back, right? Yeah, so what was always the statement? If you so choose to accept it, right? And then the tape would destroy itself and turn up into smoke, and there'd be no evidence of the mission that was given to the Mission Impossible agent. Well, I'm going to provide y'all a mission if you want to continue to do the work of building homes for those who lost their homes, which y'all have already done. All righty, let's move through this. And I just got here a little bit before I was supposed to be here, and I thank the gentleman in the back room here for rescuing me. I was told I was going to be in the bigger room down, the overflow room. And I walked in there, and there was toddlers in 4th grade and 5th grade, and I was like, wow, it's going to be a tough sell here. But then I was rescued and brought back here, and then I was told, well, you have to give us your slide deck. And okay, let me figure out how to open this computer and do that. But we had a saying in the Army, if you wait to the last minute, which we did, it's only a minute of work. So that's about all the time we had this morning. So hopefully we can get through this a little quicker. So I'm going to introduce you to some of the folks that we have served because they're people. They're not buildings. They're not structures. First person we built for, and the Grace Fellowship Disaster Response Team helped build this house, is for Mike Huffman. Mike Huffman is a resident of Buck Creek. Buck Creek had a mountain landslide. I mean, literally a creek as wide as this podium, maybe at most. That mudslide made it about 2 football fields wide and destroyed his single-wide trailer that he was in. Got out, got in his truck to drive up the creek, up towards where the slide came from, and more of the slide picked him up and tossed him on high ground and preserved his life. His brother did not live. He was going to see his brother up the road in another single-wide trailer, and he passed away. So Mike has a memory of the storm. Not only did he lose everything, his home, a place to live, but he lost his brother. Mike has been around what we call mountain man religion for all his life. He has played guitar in the camp meetings, the tent meetings, the revivals that just travel the mountains, but never came to faith. We didn't know that until we got to know Mike. That's what happened when we started building for Mike Huffman, as we got to know him. It's what Mercy Ministry does. Mercy Ministry disarms people, and they're willing to talk about their life and the need for help. And then we can talk about our life in Christ and how He has helped us. So Mike comes to us, and what you're looking at is on the right side of the slide is the ceremony inside his home where we are presenting a key to a mortgage-free house. All said and done, probably about $45,000 home. A 200 square foot, it probably would sell for about $240,000 on the market. He has a new home. You see a bunch of people sitting on the couch. I'm sitting next to Mike. And he's asked us to hold a Bible study in his home for the people in Buck Creek. That's Mercy Ministry. Mercy is both deed and word. It's never absent the word. Never absent the word. And so when Pastor Serafini, some of y'all may know him. He came out of the Heritage Reformed Church over in New Jersey, very well north of the Mason-Dixon line, and he came south of the Mason-Dixon line as learning to speak Southernese as a Brazilian, and he is now our pastor. And we went out to meet Mike for the very first time. We opened the Word and we prayed, and we established a relationship. You see the man handing the key to Mike? That's our general contractor in our congregation who's building the homes. His name's Jimmy. Jimmy grew up in the mountains. Jimmy knows mountain man religion. Mountain man religion is works righteousness. I get saved in a revival. I start climbing the mountain. What happens? I backslide. I'm told to try harder in mountain man religion. Do more things. Work towards that righteousness. Up I go that mountain again, and then I slide backwards, and I give up. And what they fail to realize is Christ is already on the mountain, and you're there with him if you're unified in his blood. So we have a lot of giving up. We have a lot of people who have tried religion, in their words, and need help. And now I'm sitting next to a man who is asked to be baptized. And that never would have happened in our experience with Mike unless we built that house. Y'all, helped come build this man's house. And Pastor Serafini and I are now in there teaching a Bible study in the book of John. Isn't that beautiful how the Lord works? It's awesome. And so this is the first house we built, Mike Huffman. Let me give you a little bit of experience background, further background on Clyde. I'm going to call him Clyde now. Pastor Johnny and I go to pray on him. He tells us that he's seen an angel. Now, us Reformed types, as soon as we hear something like that, we go, click, all right, something's wrong with this guy, okay? Ain't no angels floating around here, dude, looking at you. No, we didn't overreact. We just listen. That's what you do. You just listen. And what had happened is, Mike has cancer. Mike has prostate cancer. Mike was going through treatment and was very ill. And somebody knocked on his door one day, a neighbor. And he didn't know him. He had no idea who this guy was, but he said he had bright blue eyes, he had a great big smile, and he says, "Can I come in and pray on you?" And the man came in and prayed on him, and he asked the man's name. He's still thinking he's an angel. And he says, "My name is Clyde." So Mike has now taken on Clyde's, the angel's name, as his nickname. Now, that sounds a little weird, but it was Clyde opening his heart to us about some things in his life, and the fact that he understands there's a spiritual realm that he may not fully understand, but he's willing to explore it. And so we prayed on him. We didn't overreact. And he still to this day talks about this angel, but he now has spoken of this person as a human that has been sent to him like an angel, okay, that has ministered to him and reminded him that in his weakness, he needs prayer. He still is battling prostate cancer, but he's doing okay. So that's Mike Huffman. Any questions on Mike? Y'all help build this home. Those that you sent put their hands on that wood and material to build that home, and we're very grateful. As did, by the way, 70 total people over 19 churches, of which 15 churches were OPC, and representing 6 different states, built that house. Isn't that beautiful? Amen. Let's move forward. This is Jay Edwards. Jay's a single mother. Jay's single wide trailer was sitting where you see that home that's been built for her. and a tree about the size of the one on the left was on the right, and it fell on her house during a storm. Now, her single-wide trailer already had black mold in it before the storm. It didn't get any better when that tree fell on it. And we learned of her and went to her, and her daughter, 9-year-old daughter, Bella. So she's a single mother. She works hard. She's a cook at a golf course restaurant. Works hard. She runs the kitchen there. And she's a Christian. She goes to a Pentecostal church. That was fun for us because we got to meet her pastor. And if you haven't heard a Pentecostal prayer before, hang on tight because it can get exciting. What you see, let's see, on the far bottom right, it's kind of small, but sitting next to Jay is her pastor. And when we closed prayer, he read the word, and then we closed in prayer, and I held his hand. We all held hands together. Something else we don't normally do in the Reformed works. And so we were standing in a circle holding hands, and all of a sudden my right arm is doing this the entire prayer. But it reminded me the joy of our salvation. The joy of our salvation. You can see that she's already decorated her home with Bible verses on her cabinets. And so her church was helpful. They did not have the means to help build a home, but they came alongside. And the pastor would often bring us lunch and pray on us, as did Pastor Serafini. And so they continue to minister to her. In fact, when something breaks in that home, now they go. Her own church serves her. The other day she called Jimmy, our general contractor, and said, the hot water's not hot enough. And we said, you have your own church, go talk to them. We want to make sure that's a close relationship. Her own church can serve her. She has deacons in that church. And she did. But she had, it's kind of like cutting apron strings. You build the house, here it is. Oh, you guys are here to fix it when it breaks. Nope. It's now yours. You have your own church. But she's been a joy in her faith and the strength that the Lord's given her over time. She calls us, she's worshiped with us, she calls us her Landis family. And so she has two churches in a sense, one that loves her from a distance and then one she worships in. Isn't that beautiful? Y'all help build this home. We have completed 2 homes. It's been a little bit of a process. I'll tell you why here in a minute. But y'all laid your hands on that material. In fact, I think it was this house, Stephen, that y'all had to go get some material because we didn't have the right material. Now, I think you got your truck loaded up and then handed us the receipt. But that's the type of work volunteers are doing, especially volunteers that know what they're doing. They fill the gaps where we make mistakes or we've forgotten something. Because Jimmy was working on finishing out, Jimmy, our contractor, member of our church, was working on finishing out Mike Clyde Huffman's home. So we had Stephen and the team able to do some general contractor type labor. So they were much more than just volunteers. They were wise volunteers. Sometimes we had volunteers, we had to go behind them and repair the work. Didn't have any problems with that here with y'all. Well, thank you for helping build Jay's home. She's now settled. Any questions? Let's move to the next 2 homes we're going to build. How are we doing on time? Doing good, guys? There's a clock. All right. I bet you 2 have been offered a lot of money that when the pastor's preaching, he's going too long to reach up there and move that clock hand a little bit. I often thought of that. Okay, so you have Cliff and then Hollifield. Now, if you remember in the video that David Nakla and his team produced, this is the home that they almost lost their life. The mudslide came down and knocked it off its foundation for about 60 feet and buried them in the mud inside. Knocked out Cliff. He was passed out. Nan was buried. She couldn't get out of all the material that was on top of her. And y'all remember in the video, she says, I kept crying out for Cliff, and I heard nothing. I thought he was dead. And she prayed that she would not die alone. Because Cliff wasn't answering her. She thought he was dead. She wanted to be found before she died. Cliff awoke from his being knocked out. By the way, his back was broken. And he tried to get his wife out, and he couldn't do it. So he went up the hills in his underwear and bare feet to neighbors who were high above the landslide. And some of them came and helped get Nan out, and they put him in a little shed on the property that did not get destroyed. And they waited about 12 hours before first responders could get to him. They both went through surgeries. They're now living in an apartment waiting on their home to be built. It's in the process of being built right now. It'll probably this week coming up, the framing will go up. Now, the reason why this is slowed down a little bit, more so than usual, is because shortly after the storm, the county officials, inspectors of buildings, as they get built, the code inspectors, had relaxed, not their standards, but who could inspect. And so since we had an engineer, Steve, in our church, who had built the plans, they allowed him to do the inspections. And so our inspection process moved quickly. And that's important to understand, because if you have to wait on an inspector, normally it takes a while. They'll tell you they'll be out these days, and sometimes they do or don't. And you don't want to call volunteers from 6 different states and 19 different churches to come and sit and wait for an inspector to get his work done. You want it to be inspected already, and so they can get to work when they arrive. There are 19 inspections that have to take place for a building to receive a certificate of occupancy. And you can see how complex it becomes really fast if you have to wait on inspectors, and that's what's happened. The city and in the county have said, okay, it's not that we don't trust y'all that have the experience, you engineers and so forth, architects and things like that. It's just we're going to get sued if something happens to that house. It burns down and somebody loses their life. And so we need to return to those standards. Thus, we have slowed down a little bit. One of the problems we've had with Cliff and Nan's home is that the foundation, they wanted a basement. They had received some FEMA money to pay for that basement. They hired somebody that did not do the work to code, and now we're having to redo it. Okay, so it's taken a little bit longer. We hope to be done in March, and I'll tell you why in a minute, because normally it's been taking us about 6 months or longer to build the first 2. We hope to build faster here shortly, and I'll tell you why in a second. Then you have Melissa Chapman, and yes, all 9 of those children are hers. She was living in a home that she was renting to buy. She had a terrorist for a landlord who would never fix anything in the home. And so it almost had become uninhabitable with black mold, electrical fires, leaks in the roof. And she had been in court, several court meetings to alleviate the problem, to get her landlord, property manager, to do his work. She was at her wit's end when the day prior to the storm, Hurricane Helene, she had prayed, God, please help me figure out what to do. And the Lord answered. He destroyed the home to the point to where she had to call for help. So her mother lives in a single wide, can't fit anybody in it, but they stuffed everybody in that single wide for a night or two, and she got a 24-foot trailer a couple days later. Subsequently, a 34-foot trailer, which you see in the background. They had been living in a 34-foot trailer with 9 children since shortly after Hurricane Helene to this day. They have a porta potty outside. They have now, just in the last 2 months, when it got hot in the summer, and they were living off a generator, that they went through 6 generators because they're not meant to run 24 hours a day for that long every day. She now has a power drop that the county put there. They don't normally put power drops, so they were showing some mercy. They don't put power drops unless you're doing construction. There's no construction going on that site. She has a piece of land that's close to this, and we should build her home starting in December and hopefully ending in March. Now, since we started, Samaritan's Purse, which is, by the way, headquartered out of Boone, North Carolina, in the mountains, they actually were hammered just as much as anybody in the region of the 27 counties that were impacted by Hurricane Helene, have come alongside us, all the county churches and several other counties, with funds. Samaritan's Purse had $500 million donated to them for Hurricane Helene. More money than they could shake a stick at. They'd never believed that that much money would come their way. And so now they're going to pay for the build of these 2 homes. We still have money in the OPC account. Now, there are little things that they won't pay for. Septic and well. The OPC will pay for septic and well. And then any other gaps where we see those gaps. We have those disaster response funds still available to us to do that work. So we still have work to do. It's a slow process. However, we will be able to pay for skilled labor. In fact, it's a requirement with the funds that are coming that it's skilled labor, which means it'll be done to standard, pass code, and quickly. Samaritan's Purse says we have 4 months to build the homes. Once we break ground, we can do that. Okay, and so they should be in their homes by March. Okay, any questions here? Yes, Steve? Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. Yes. Thank you for the reminder. That was an Army nurse, right? Air Force nurse, excuse me. She wanted to be in the Army, but anyhow. Sorry. I back up. Air Force. She wanted to be in the Air Force. Why? I don't know. But so Nan and Clifton are getting, we normally build, the first 2 homes you saw were 16 by 40s. And they wanted a little bit more. So they had that FEMA money. They're going to pay for that 8-foot extension in their basement. They're going 16 by 48. We have to make the house bigger for Melissa and her family. So it's going to be a 32, instead of 16, 32 wide, 48 long, 2 bathrooms, not just one. Debbie and I have, as you heard, 10 grandkids, and when we go on a vacation over the summer together, we got to have 4 to 5 bathrooms with those. It's amazing how many of y'all have 10 kids in your family? I imagine some of y'all do. It is chaos when it comes to bathrooms. But yes, she's going to get a bigger home. Now that presents some other challenges because as soon as you widen that structure and make it a little bit longer, now you got supporting walls and a bunch of other stuff. But we have an engineer that can do that type of thing. And the code requirements will be a little tighter, more stringent, since you have load bearing going on. Great question. Stephen, did that answer your question? Thank you. Oh, okay, good. Yes.
So you said that it's going to be skilled labor?
Yeah.
Hiring trades in the area to do that work and no longer using volunteers?
Correct. We more than likely will not use volunteers unless, it's painting or something that can be done. And then we have the Presbytery of the Southeast churches that I can, hey, painters come, that type of thing. But yes, working with the skilled labor in the local community gives back to the community. And you got to remember, Jimmy's a general contractor. Again, he's a member of our church. It was his idea to do the building of these homes for these mountain folks. And he has a list of skilled labor, licensed skilled labor that he uses. Great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Has FEMA been involved at all?
Yes, great question. The question was, FEMA been involved? Yes, they have. There's with the governmental agency, there's the good and the ugly. There's been a lot of good by FEMA in the engagement of the communities, and some communities more so than others. In McDowell County, where we are stationed, where we're positioned, it has been okay. It's not been adversarial. The funding came quickly, like with Nan and Clifton, within weeks. It was in their accounts. But if you go up to Avery County, this is a hilarious story to me. So Avery County is further up in the mountains. They got hit harder probably than anybody. And FEMA kept telling them how things were going to be done up there. And the Avery County officials uninvited them out of the county. They said, you can leave now. We don't need you. Now, if you understand mountain people, that's not abnormal. My last name's Cloy. I've often been accused of being a McCoy, and I don't like Hatfields, right? Hatfield and McCoy, some of y'all get that. I'm telling you, the older you get, these jokes are hard to come across, right? But the Hatfield McCoy, it's that type of living up there. They either love or hate each other. And they don't want to get along with their neighbor if there's, someone spilled, moonshine on the carpet. They ain't going to get along for a little bit. So Avery County wasn't a good experience, kicked them out. But as a whole, it's been okay. The state's been pretty good. One of the things that Samaritan's Purse has also put money towards is bridges. You got to remember, there's a creek everywhere, and there's a homemade mom and pop bridge to get across the creek to get to their house. A lot of washed out bridges. They're not state certified. They're not meeting code. But Samaritan's Purse is going to spend some of that money to build those bridges and even improve some of the driveways. And they're doing that now. Great questions. Others regarding these two? Okay. All right. Let's move on. All right, here's your mission. Almost looks like John Steinbeck, right? That's Winston Solomon. And this could be a mission for Grace Fellowship. Samaritan's Purse is not going to pay for his home. We didn't ask them to pay for his home. We asked them to pay for Nan and Clifton's and Melissa's home. The reason why we didn't ask for money for Winston is we don't know if Winston's going to get housed or not. Let me tell you a little bit about Winston. First of all, he's got a cool name. Winston's a cool name. Solomon's a cool name, right? So Winston lived up in Swannanoa, up in Black Mountain, Swannanoa area, and they got hammered. So they were on higher ground. He was living in a single-wide home with his son, Jacob Solomon, who, by the way, was Air Force. And he's been attending our church. And until he quits talking about the Air Force, he'll never be a member of the church. No. But Jacob and his daddy, when he came out of the Air Force, he needed a place to stay. So Jacob was up there hanging out with his dad, and they didn't really get along at times. Sometimes they did. Now, don't get me wrong, Jacob loves his father. And so when that storm hits, Jacob goes and finds a place closer to Landis, actually within a couple of miles, and a trailer RV park. And it works for Baxter's, a very large company down the road that produces about 60% of the saline solution for this nation. And it was shut down during the storm, where they were rationing saline solution across our nation on the East Coast. And so Jacob tells us about his daddy, who's now in Ohio with his sister and his dog living, and she gratefully is hosting him. Hopefully he can get back and find a place to live in close to Marion or his previous home, and he can't. Everybody's looking. Hotels are full. The place is maxed out occupancy, and it's one of the reasons why when we ask in disaster response, when you ask volunteers to come, you got to figure out how to house them without imposing your neighbors who live there who need structure to live in. So that's why we offered up the PCA's bunkhouse, which did y'all stay in that? You did, right? High living. It's almost like Air Force quality living, right? High standard of living. So now we're not doing that anymore. We turned that back over to the PCA. The bunkhouse is back to them. We were very grateful to them. And then we had a little RV that was donated to us that they could cook out of if they wanted. Really small, though. So anyhow, so Winston is in Ohio. While he's there, he breaks his femur bone somehow on a fall, I think. And then he gets an infection where they're having to do IV work with antibiotics to get his infection under control for him to fully heal up. And his sister's now getting a little fed up with him. And that's where he is today. Now, we want to build a home for Mr. Winston. But Mr. Winston may not be mobile enough to live in a home. So we're having to figure that out. But until then, we're trying to alleviate the stress between he and his sister. He can't find a place now even because he's got a dog. Dogs in renting places is tough. And so what you're looking at is a tiny home. A tiny home was built by Mennonites that came out of Pennsylvania and built a bunch of those things. And you can see it's got a hot water, shower, 2-room, one's a bathroom, sink, and toilet. And then the other side has a kitchen sink, which is what you're looking at when you first walk in the door, and it's got a mini split to heat it. But it ain't big, but it's comfortable. And his son lives about 20 feet in the RV park, so he can be there for his dad. But they're not living together, so they're not going after each other. Now you remember, this is all about word and deed. Winston Solomon is a Jehovah's Witness. And the reason why we need to overwhelm Winston-Salem with the mercy of God and volunteers showing him Christ through their mercy ministry is he needs to come to know Jesus Christ as his only hope of righteousness. That's what moved Mike Clyde Huffman to say, I want to be baptized. I want a Bible study in my house. I want to know God. Mike Huffman said, I'd never seen so many people. I had given hope. He says on the video, I had given hope that there were good people still out there in the world. And I met them. And it was people from Grace Fellowship Church that helped us get in his home with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's a new mission, if you choose to accept it. Now, we got to shape it. We got to get Mr. Solomon down. We think that's going to happen this December. We just got the plumbing hooked up to it. We had to get it moved from about 40 miles away, got it situated, had to get it put up on blocks, got the plumbing hooked up and the water line, and the electrician will be there on Wednesday. And then I told Jacob Solomon, his son, you better find a bed, a microwave, a small refrigerator, table, maybe a TV tray because you can't put too much in there, some curtains, some towels, whatever you got to do to make that, and a place to step up in it. That's the Army and me telling him how to do things. I usually say, okay, Skippy, this is how you're going to do this. But he was Air Force, so I can't talk to him that way. See, when you show a sign of weakness, I move in like a shark. So that's the way we do it in the middle. You know this, right? And it's also a means of affection because I honor her and her service to her nation. So Winston, I've never met the man. I've talked to him 1,000 times. He's a gentleman on the phone. We need to pray for Winston's soul. Winston Solomon, what a name. Can you not forget his name? No. What did Solomon want to do for God? And what did he do for God? He built God's house, his temple. Am I wrong? No? He did. David wanted to do it. God said, no, your son's going to do it. And here we got a Solomon that we need to build a house for. So we've got a piece of property. His daughter owns it. She's agreed to let us put it on there. We may not build a 16 by 40. It may be a little bit smaller because he doesn't need all that much room. He may be moving around on a walker. We got to do a lot of assessment once he gets on the ground to see what he's capable of doing as far as daily living activities. Okay? Any questions on Winston? Do y'all understand the mission? I hope so, because I was overjoyed to see those Michigan long underwear legs on a couple occasions, and I'd love to see him bring more. Not just one trip, multiple trips. Wouldn't it be beautiful that the home that is built for Winston Solomon has been built by this church in every aspect? Foundation, flooring, walls, roof, drywall, electrical, plumbing, heating. We can come alongside and get the material and even the expertise where needed. But it can be done. We did it for 2 homes. We can do it for a 3rd. Any questions about Winston Solomon's home? Do y'all feel like you got a pretty good update now of what's going on in North Carolina with the build? Stephen, is that what you needed? Okay, if not, I'll do push-ups later. Okay, providential push-ups, because I failed to obey and trust providence. Okay, all righty. If there are no more questions, I think I'll give you, yeah, Stephen?
Thank you on the North Carolina. Is there any other OPC disaster response rebuild efforts that you could talk to since you're here?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think, so the Presbytery of the Southeast has a robust disaster response arm. Anybody hear of Neon flooding years ago? Yeah, Neon is a little church up in the Kentucky hills. We went in there and Mountain Man religion again. In fact, that church is referred to as the cult in town, because there's no Means of Grace church in that county. Everything is works righteousness churches. And so the works righteous churches have literally, and the people in the county said, you go to that church, you're going to a cult. That's what we need a Neon. We need Neon more than Neon needs us. So we sent a bunch of people on Neon as Presbytery of the Southeast. 17 churches of our, at the time, 29 churches in our presbytery sent people and restored their sanctuary in 2 months' time. The Lord blessed tremendously. And so we're predisposed to, if anything happens in our presbytery, to run to help. So it is with the hurricane. We have what we call a disaster advance response team, which is composed of men that have been FEMA trained and been certified on how to operate chainsaws and generators and all the equipment. And most of them, especially I've got 4 Brazilians on the team, can probably cut a tree into a toothpick with a chainsaw. That's how good they are with them. And when we see a hurricane coming or we learn of flooding, we move them out of the northern Atlanta area with a trailer that's 16 foot with all the gear in it, and rent a skid steer, and we pre-position so as soon as the hurricane passes over, we go in. And we've done that now several times. Y'all heard of the Special Forces background I have? Well, I worked on a 12-man A-team, Special Forces A-team, and that's basically what we created, is a Special Forces 12-man A-team that goes in and restores the church first if it's destroyed. And there's reasons for that. The only way you're going to heal after a storm and have the peace of God is to be in worship. And so worship is our priority. And then we go out and we help those in the congregation who've lost their home and their neighbors. Evangelism, word and deed. Okay? So, I can help y'all put one of those together. I don't know if you're allowed to go on up in Canada with it, but you've got storms up here. And so maybe you can put something together like that in the presbytery. As far as anything going on right now in the presbytery, it's basically the hurricane that we're dealing with. But if there's something that comes up, trust me, we shoot what we call a red star cluster up in the air. Help! And if y'all see that red star cluster go up, start asking questions. Look at the website, the OPC disaster response website, and get details. We've also been to the presbytery of the southeast with the DART and helped with 2 hurricanes with the restoring churches in Louisiana. They got hit pretty hard, and we're willing to go anywhere else. We have, we're the keepers of dehumidifiers, industrial dehumidifiers, and we have a man who ran in our presbytery who ran for years his own environmental cleaning business, cleaning up murder scenes to black mold to whatever, and he is certified. He's got more credentials you can stick at, and we'll send him to do assessment, and we did that for the flooding that was up here in those 2 homes, I believe, years ago. I think it was in Michigan. And we sent Debbie and I was driving a 26-foot truck with all the gear in it, and I handed it off to a bunch of deacons, and they kept it for a year, and they cleaned out that home and got it rebuilt. And then it made its way to Maryland where there was a flood, and then we control it now. So that goes anywhere anybody needs it. So if you have something like that, we'll put it in a truck and send it to you and show you how to operate it, and we'll send Jim, the expert, to analyze the damage, the water damage in the home, okay? So we lean into disaster response in the presbytery, and we have a way of helping if someone lets us or makes us aware of what's going on and what they need. Other questions? Very good. Please pray for us, sir.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your experience and expertise with us all. As I was listening, I was meditating on, maybe many of you here know the history of the OPC, how the OPC was born, and how it was born really beginning with a controversy over the interaction between word and deed-based ministries. And so I think maybe we have this tendency, because the OPC started out of this dissatisfaction that PCUSA missions were all deed-based, and let's keep the word out of it. Let's just help people and affirm them in whatever their religion is, that we can have this overreaction to really the use of deed to make a place for the word to come. And so thank you, Mike, for helpfully explaining how deed-based ministries can open a door, and how the Lord can use that to see real spiritual change, and pray that the Lord would continue using this ministry to that end. I was also encouraged how everyone here has some opportunity to do ministry. It's not just pastors preaching and teaching. We're not the only ones that have worth in Christ's church to do ministry. These types of ways of getting involved are so powerful, and the Lord uses them so wonderfully to call in His elect people from all over the world in unique situations. So if you see, you have gifts to use your hands. I don't. I know Pastor Mike doesn't. I don't know about Pastor Mark. No. So this is, we're a church for a reason, because we all have different gifts and different abilities. And so I'm so encouraged today seeing opportunities that we can all use those for the church. Mike is going to be around this morning. He's going to be around again tonight. So if you have questions, please feel free to come up to him and ask him those questions. He'll be here all day. But I'm going to close us in prayer, and then we can get ready for worship. Our Father in heaven, Lord, thank you so much for your ministry. Lord, this is your ministry. This is something that you've called your people to, because you are calling in your people. Lord, you're gathering in your elect from the 4 corners of the earth, and we thank you for the variety of ways that you move your church to do this, for how you employ deed-based ministries to minister to those who are in need. Lord, people who are in this sensitive, trying, vulnerable position that you use to be an open door for your spiritual truth to root deeply inside of them. So I thank you for this ministry of the OPC and pray that you would use it to call your people to yourself. Lord, thank you for McCloy and for how you have used him throughout his life to serve, Lord, in the military. And then now in your church, thank you for how you've gifted him not only to do deed-based labor, but also to be willing to speak, to do presentations, and to share the good work that's being done throughout the OPC. I pray that you would use this presentation to be a prick in our side, that we would move towards this as a congregation. That we would, Lord, not take for granted how comfortable we are here in Zeeland, Michigan, in this beautiful building, but that we would see a need and a calling to move towards others who don't have these same benefits, and that we would show them the light of Christ in these really tangible ways. So use this presentation now. And now as we prepare for worship, I pray that you would prepare our hearts and equip us to hear the word that is brought. Lord, that's the real deal, is when we're gathering around your word and being encouraged by your Spirit. I pray that it would be encouragement to us today, that we'd be blessed by it. In your name, amen.